Hi, my name is Marsha, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we are going to be talking about those key buzzwords that we are hearing on the news, from the principals, from admin. Today, we are going to be talking about unfinished learning. We're going to talk about knowledge gaps. We're going to talk about the summer slide or the learning loss. All of these key buzzwords that you keep hearing as you turn on the news or as you go to a workshop are all meaning the same thing. During the pandemic, we would see some different learning opportunities for students. Some students were virtual, some students were on site, some were in a hybrid environment, that social distancing, so it wasn't a traditional school year. What has occurred during the pandemic is that there's going to be holes and gaps in the students' understanding of the traditional content that we teach in a school year. So today I'm going to be talking about, well, what does that mean? How do we actually try to remedy that effect of that summer slide or learning loss? I'm going to be breaking it down into 3 parts. What I'm going to be talking about first is, what is the data saying? Some of the data is making predictions, and then some of the data that we're going to be looking at is actually using the spring test scores. Most states gave the standardized test in the spring, and we're actually comparing where the data was from 2020 to the spring of 2019. And we're looking to see where are those holes and gaps in comparison. It's fascinating to see that most students were great and they managed to get through this, where some students were really struggling with certain aspects. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is we are actually going to be visiting with one of my good friends, Mr. Chris Hecker. Mr. Chris Hecker is a principal at Cy Park High School, and that is located in Cy Fair ISD. I've been working with his high school team of teachers for the last couple of years, and we've really been working on differentiated instruction. When we talk to Chris today, we are going to really understand that now more than ever, he wants his team of educators to push toward small group instruction. So I am going to talk to him. He's going to give us some ideas, and then after the conversation, I'm going to come back and give you some ideas for small group. How do we take that idea of a whole group instruction with 24 students, and how do we actually differentiate that content to make it meaningful for them? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide to break apart your lesson. So now that students are going to be taking ownership, they're going to be more engaged, and we're going to be using this data to help drive the small groups. Might sound like a lot, but trust me, this is going to be one of the greatest ways to get to that learning loss and unfinished business that the students have occurred during the pandemic. Are you ready to get started? All right, let's start out by looking at the data. All right, before we go any further, I just want to tell you that when I was doing our introduction, I was using the product called eGlass. I love eGlass. It makes it so easy to keep that participation engagement. And also, I get asked this question a lot. Marsha, are you writing backwards? No, I am not writing backwards. What is happening is that I'm actually writing normal, and then the camera flips the image so you see it the way that I'm writing. This new age dry erase board is going to definitely revolutionize the way that we talk to the students, engage the students, and it makes it easy for that hybrid, virtual, and on-site learning opportunities, because you never take the eyes off of the students. So if you haven't looked at eGlass yet, definitely go look into it. Just a quick little nudge there. Go look at eGlass. It's worth it. Okay, so let's look at the data. So first and foremost, up on the screen, I have a bit.ly link. This bit.ly link is case sensitive, so make sure when you type it in, you actually capitalize the word COVID. This is coming from the NWEA map results, and it's the predictions about what they might see from the year of 2019 school year to the 2020 school year. Where are those holes and gaps? This is what the data is forecasting. It's saying that in a traditional year, there's always what's called the summer slide. The summer slide has been around for decades. We always know, educators know, that when students come back, we got to do a quick little review just to get them back in the swing of school. So there is always that traditional summer slide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to animate this data, and I'm going to compare the traditional summer slide to the prediction of what they were forecasting for the 2020-21 school year. You ready? All right, so I animated it in a fun way from the guy from Price is Right. And so what he's doing is he's actually climbing the mountain as if it were a student in a traditional school year. When a student gets to the end of the school year in June, he has learned all the knowledge that he can contain for that one school year. But when he comes back to school in the fall, there's always a little bit of learning loss, the summer slide. Now, what you're going to see is this is, again, that same student. And as they are going through, this is the fall of 2019, they are on the right track to continue that learning process until March of 2020. In March of 2020, when we did the lockdown, we actually did not get to complete a traditional school year in the way that we normally do. So they never got their fullest potential, some of them. Now, as they come back in 2020, fall of 2020, we actually saw that they were lower than where they kind of started in the fall of 2019. This was a prediction. And the prediction also was stating that we are really thinking about the traditional school year and the COVID school year. So the traditional school year is in light green and the COVID year is in the dark green. So math is taking the bigger hit right now, according to the prediction. We're actually seeing that students have fallen back on their math scores than what they would have traditionally done in a normal school year. Let's look at one more piece of data. This is sixth grade. And you can definitely see that in September, the students started out at a 212, very traditional. But when COVID hit, so if you look at that June data, you see how it dropped drastically to 213, and then it went down to 211. This NWEA map assessment is a baseline to help us gauge where students are. I love this assessment because it's always that quick, where are you? How do we get the students to that next level? So this is data that I truly believe is a good prediction as far as what is going to happen in the school year. And we kind of saw it. We kind of saw it this year when we completed the 2020-21 school year. We noticed some of those holes and gaps. All right, I want to look at one more piece of data, so hold tight. So I pulled up another document that's talking about this unfinished learning. Remember, there's all different kinds of words that are kind of relating to the same thing. Unfinished learning, learning loss, learning gap, summer slide. What it is, again, is this holes and gaps in that student's education career that traditionally aren't there. So this is by McKinsey & Company, and it was just published in, I think it says, July of 2021. And what it's talking about is that unfinished learning and the effects of COVID. So as we go through this article, and of course, go find this. It's a really good article to sit down and read with your staff, your teammates, to just understand what we're talking about with this unfinished learning. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to some actual data pieces. I know you can see I highlighted it. I'm telling you, this is a great article just to help you. But what we're seeing is that we're comparing at the end of 2021 school year. And it's saying that on average, they're about 5 months behind in math and 4 months behind in reading. And we're looking at different backgrounds as far as race, income, and location. So city, urban, and rural environments. This data is definitely making it very clear because we're using the state standard test as well and comparing it with what we are seeing in the classroom. And the research is saying that definitely math has been a bigger hit for that knowledge unfinished learning gaps that we're seeing, and definitely by location. As you go through this data piece, there is definitely even more. It talks about pre-COVID, the shutdowns, summer, and then the school year. Educators, we have to be aware of this data. It's never fun to be like, oh my gosh, I had to catch all these kids up. We still need to follow that pacing guide. Still need to follow that scope and sequence so we don't make the kids even further behind. But what that means is that now we need to adjust the way that we're teaching in the classroom. And small group instruction is one of those key points. Now let's turn it over. Let's do a quick little interview with Mr. Hecker and his game plan for his high school team of teachers as they go into the fall of 2021. All right, welcome everybody. We're super excited to have you. I have one of my good friends, Mr. Chris Hecker, a principal at Cy Park High School in Cy-Fair ISD. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey, hello everyone.
And I brought you on board because of the fact that when I was at your school a couple of weeks ago, you gave like this really big opening kickoff for implementing small group instruction to your staff. And I just want everybody to kind of hear like your viewpoint, like why are small groups important and why is it important for teachers to really think about building those connections with students?
Yeah, so first off, thank you for having me. Blended Learning has been amazing for our campus, and I'm thrilled to get the chance to speak about small groups. So, especially with what we've just experienced the last 15, 16 months, small groups is a great opportunity to have the connection with each kid individually. And one of the things that I shared with our awesome teachers is if you think about the kids that we really build connections with in our classrooms, it's really your high flyers, the one that really seeks you out and asks you a lot of questions and really kind of connect on that cognitive level. And then you have the kids that are the struggling learners that we just naturally tend to. But your middle of the road student, sometimes they can just hide out and you really don't have that connection. So one of the things that we're really dialed in on this upcoming school year is we want to build that social emotional connection with all of our kids. And so small groups allows you to do that. When you routinely see your kids in smaller settings, you get to know their thoughts, get to know their likes, their dislikes, and of course, all about their learning. And so you have that relational aspect that we get to build right in. Second fold, I just love the opportunity to differentiate instruction with those small groups. I think it's just such an advantage the way that we can arrange our classrooms to meet the needs of every kid. And the concept of differentiated instruction is nothing new, but I've always struggled with how do you actually pull that off in a classroom on a routine basis? And it is through that small group instruction. You get to select the content that you need to hit. You get to select the way you deliver it based upon the kids' needs, and then group them in those like areas. And some of our staff talks about, well, I'm going to be repeating myself, multiple times in the class, and that's not actually the case. If we're really differentiated instruction, then you're going to be delivering, probably the same teaks, but you're doing it in a different way, a manner that you're really charging those kids that really get it to extend their learning, the kids that just need those tweaks, and then the kids that really need some more intense help. And so I would say I'm a big fan of it, and I just look forward to seeing all the great results with our kids, both relationally and academically.
And this isn't something new that your district or your campus has been doing. I mean, I've been working with you guys for the last 3 years as far as like
Exactly.
moving forward. Do you feel like this pandemic has pushed us into small groups faster?
Absolutely. I think everyone has been impacted in such a different way that some of our kids are really doing well. And then you've got a lot of our kids that are struggling to a greater magnitude. So I think you just got so many different levels now within the same classroom that it really meets our needs. Like there's no way that you can continue to conduct whole group instruction day after day after day and really be effective. So I do think that this has really been, the silver lining, a COVID keeper, if you will, of this is the best thing to do for kids. And so our staff is really pumped about it. Just listening to our teachers talk about it, they're really embracing it and think that they're going to get a really good results for our kiddos.
And you also mentioned when I was on campus with you, you're really focusing on getting to true differentiation by October, right? Is that kind of like your goal?
Yes. So we really just need to put our brains around how we can meet the needs of each kid. And so the way that we're using the differentiated blended model is we really need to develop those three paths of learning. And I know that gets us into phase 3, but where you can truly differentiate and meet the needs of each kid. And that way, I think our teachers are really starting to get those light bulb moments going off that this isn't just remedial work. This is about the extension. This is about the growth, the excitement. And then watching our kids take ownership of their own learning, that's just exciting. And as a teacher, to see kids wanting to engage, work out their own path, provide their choice. I mean, that's really the definition of differentiated instruction. So we're pumped about it. And I think that we're really going to take great strides this year in making it happen with Fidelity.
And so you also come from a pretty large campus, right? How many kids do you have enrolled in your school?
Yeah, so we'll be right at 3,000 students this year. This is our 6th year of existence, but we started in 2016 with 9th grade only, and then added a grade level every year. So this will be our 3rd year with a full 9 through 12, and we'll be graduating our 3rd class. And so it's hard to believe that the time has flown by. But yeah, we're a large school, but I think that this model really breaks it down to the individual kiddo.
And my last question for you is talking about that engagement aspect. So what we talked about earlier in this webinar is how like using different products, different resources can really help with student engagement. When I was on your campus last week, we actually did a demonstration with that eGlass and really showcased like how to do small group instruction. What was your thoughts when you saw eGlass being demonstrated live in front of your staff?
Well, I thought it was really powerful and just a great tool to use, especially with a virtual setting and with the small group instruction. And so being able to keep that face-to-face connection and not having to turn your back on the kiddos to write on the screen, or if you're doing virtually, it just is a great tool that I think is going to enhance our learning efforts.
Yeah. And when I showed your teachers, this is what's really cool. When I showed your teachers how quick it was to make those little videos, and they were like, what? Your math and science team, like their eyeballs were like, this would be so great. And it was fun. Your one biology teacher was like, I don't have to write backwards anymore.
Some of our teachers did do that. It's amazing. I would go and look at their board and I'd be like, what? It's backwards. And they're like, absolutely. I was like, that's going above and beyond. That's
great. So it's really great. And I think that good level of engagement through a small group, using devices that are going to really enhance that learning, as well as starting to differentiate. I think that's going to be our token to get us over these like little learning gaps that we have found along the way.
I totally agree. Really, really excited to use it.
Hey, Chris. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait. I'm back at your school next week. So
that's right. We're excited.
All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Marcia.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hecker, for giving us some of that great insight. A small group instruction is going to really lead that charge, as well as differentiated instruction. So let's break it down. You can definitely find some of my information that I'm talking about today on blended learning pd.com. We have a lot of great resources there, as well as on YouTube. If you go and find Kish Marcia, you're going to find a lot of videos. We created a series called the Weekly Blend, and the Weekly Blend is going to just give you some more insight. One of the videos that I just posted last week is talking about a lot of these different elements of small group. So let's talk about this first and foremost. When we go into a classroom, in a traditional classroom, a teacher usually chunks their lesson into parts. The first part the teacher starts with is an intro. They usually have an introduction, going over the key elements that they're going to be doing that day. Then the students will practice. And then they'll actually have time to either do some homework or some digital content, where the students are going to go online and they're going to practice what the teacher just talked in the introduction, re-emphasize what happened during the practice, and then they're just going to be able to hear it in a different way or practice it in a different way. A traditional classroom when we set this up, this whole group is something that we are very familiar with. But now, as we notice, as you saw in the data, that there's going to be a lot of learning gaps that are going to be occurring from COVID summer slide. So what do? Keep that lesson exactly the same, but now we're going to put it into buckets or chunks. So when a teacher is planning, we are not redesigning their plan, but rather we're thinking about when we can set this up to make it more meaningful for the students. The first thing is, I'm still going to do a quick introduction. Always important to get the kids on that same page, but I'm only going to do it for about 3 minutes. Okay? I'm going to get the students going. They're going to be just, hey, today we're learning about fill in the blank. Now, instead of continuing that whole group, what the teacher's going to do is they're going to bring it back and they're going to do small group instruction. I'm going to put the code down here so you know what I'm talking about. SG is small group. This is where we can use the data from either my exit tickets, from their independent work, their homework. I'm going to now, when the students come back to my small group, I'm going to break them into ability, not tracking. Be careful, I'm not tracking here. But when they come back to me, I'm going to say, hey, you're struggling with this concept that we just introduced. I'm going to break it down for you just a little bit more. So I'm going to be doing it by data driven. So when the kids come back, it's all going to be based off of that data. This is something that I did in my 2nd grade classroom, my 5th grade classroom, and even when I started a hybrid high school, we were always looking at that data to determine where those kids are missing some of that information and helping them to continue moving forward. So small group is your number one thing. Yesterday, while I was presenting to a team of middle school teachers, I said, you guys, you are the star of the show. Please make sure you meet with every single student so that they get that chance to hear it from you. So small group is extremely important. But while I'm working with group 1, what is group 2, 3, and 4 doing? Well, we will give them a checklist. And I'm trying not to, I'm going to have to erase this here because what happens with eGlass is I tend to write on my face sometimes. But what we're going to do is we're going to give them a checklist. And the students are going to be able to pick, well, do I want to do independent practice? Do I want to do some digital content? Or do I want to work on a project? They get to pick. So when they get this checklist, they're able to go through and say, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. So I love this checklist. Definitely make sure we include that checklist. Now with that checklist, one of the things that we're going to do next is we're going to set up the lesson that is going to be using some of that data to help drive what the kids are doing when they're not working with a teacher. So this is called IP, or independent practice. In independent practice, the students, when they go back there, they are going to relearn what that teacher was talking about. They're going to practice. This is a key word. They're going to practice the skill that they were just taught either during the introduction or in that small group. Eventually, and I say eventually, we will be differentiating the small group and independent practice. The students will get the content at their level and ability. Eventually. And teachers get all worked up about this with me. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so hard to do. And I'm like, I know, but we will work to that. So eventually we'll get to that differentiated independent practice. But when the students come back here, they're going to feel successful because they're going to be working at that content at their level. Another thing that was on their checklist was digital content. There are so many great resources out there, digital content, that the students can use to continue to learn or relearn the concepts that were taught in small group or introduction. So this digital content, some of my favorite resources that I use, freckle.com, Khan Academy, Legends of Learning, readtheory.org, Newsella. All of those websites are listed below, and I'll make sure you get a link to those. But they are great digital content resources Oh, I forgot one of my other favorite ones, Ed Puzzle. Because the students are going to be able to learn, it's going to give data to the teacher in that small group. This is one of the best ways to just make sure the kids hear it, that content, in a different format. And it's fun. The kids like it. Be careful. It is not all videos. That was one of the big misconceptions yesterday. It's actually where they're practicing, they're learning, or relearning the content. So digital content is going to be happening at the same time the teacher's doing that small group. And then I have one other thing called Future Ready. And Future Ready is, think about it as projects. Now with the devices in our hands, if I give the students some information that I want them to showcase their understanding, it's so easy to say, hey, Alexa, who was the 16th president? And they can spit it back to me. But the moment I have the students create, collaborate, use critical thinking skills, or communication, I am now making them take that information, internalize it, and create a product to show me that they know it. This future ready activities could include, I'm going to write this out so you guys know, could include a sort, a poster, a video that they create. Love Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a great video creator. They could be just talking. They could be doing what's called a gallery walk, where they walk around and they look at the different questions, talk with their teammate, they think, they share, and they post during the gallery walk. Don't think that we have to implement coding here. Go to my videos on the YouTube and I will walk you through these different studios. But that is another big misconception. It's like, oh my gosh, future ready means that they have to make a Shark Tank project. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just showing their understanding of the content in a way that makes sense to them. So as we set up these different small group, independent digital content, future ready learning studios, we are going to really start to target the needs of the students. The engagement is going to go up, behaviors are going to go down, and it's just going to really make it easier to fill in those knowledge gaps. All right, you guys, definitely feel free to go to our website, contact me. My contact information is right down here, Marcia at blendedlearningpd.com. And I will give you tons of information if you want to learn more about these studios, learn more how to do small group instruction. We have a lot of stuff ready to rock and roll for your team. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. We looked at the data, we got time to talk to a principal, and we also had the opportunity to go in and just kind of come up with a game plan for going from whole group instruction to small group, independent, digital content, and future ready. Good luck, you guys. You got this, and enjoy the start of the school year.